Hello, I'm Mark Baer. I'm with Elizabeth Murray. You're watching Conversations and Collaborations. This is the second part of our interview. We're talking about new work. We're talking about risk, change, growth, the fear of new work, and the euphoria of it. And I think I'm going to start us here because we're on your property, and down the hill there, you're building a new studio.
God willing.
And you're committed for the next 30 years, the next
That's
big
right.
act of your life, to painting. So you don't want to, the artist can fall into the trap where he can do something pleasing and you can have an audience and they'll buy your work and you want to please that audience and you'll keep doing that work. And that's just kind of the worst trap in the world. Because there's no surprise. Once you know how to kind of do something, you can do it. And going into new space means that you can leave people behind. There's no certainty that anybody is going to like what you do. And there's this high wire act where you don't know what it is.
Or what comes next, or where you are.
Or where it comes next.
Yeah.
But if you want to paint for your life, you have to, that is a constant dance. It's all about the new, it's all about the reinvention, it's all about the possibility of what happens on these little square campuses with your 6 colors.
Thank you for bringing up this dream of mine. It's part of it, living here in Charles Roller Peters' old house and having done all this restoration, 9,000 pounds of steel in the very ceiling we're in, is about me painting for the next 30 years, God willing. Right here, right, knock on wood, awaken the tree spirits, have them stand behind me. And so, part of my dream is to build my new big studio. And what I want to be able to do there is to paint some very large paintings like Monet's Water Lilies, but mine will be maybe the Grand Canyon, the walls of the canyons, or something that is sense of place that from my place, the cliffs around here, the feeling of being on the edge of the sea and the land, the wild garden, This, I like the wild and the cultivated, but that idea of risk and North Star, where are we going to? Where are we right now in this moment, and where do we want to go? Sort of that both and that spiritual quest, creativity as a spiritual act, an act of risk, an act of great creativity, and where you're always kind of in fear a bit because you're on the edge. There's no formulas, there's no recipe. Maybe you have some skill after all these years, some familiarity with the colors, and a little bit on application. I like to paint outdoors and I do wax and oil. So sometimes it starts to melt on me. It's a hot day and like, oh my God, it's starting to melt. Things change. It's a moving discovery.
But it is like I said when I walked in, I go, wow, there's a drama going on. And it is a drama, and it is internal. I mean, it's very dramatic when you're going through this situation. In your head.
Yeah.
You're going, what is this? Can I do it with shape? Can I do it with this?
Yeah.
How is this? How am I reinventing myself? Because it's more than reinventing something. This is just the kind of the record of it. But you're going through a real, this is hard to explain, but you're going through a real physical adventure in your mind to see the world in a different way. To paint the world in a different way, you have to see the world in a different way, which means that you have to shift your kaleidoscope a bit and you have to shift everything around. You have to go to that new place. Well, that's, so it's a big adventure.
It is.
It's not, oh, I just
appreciate that you
didn't
get
change
it.
your style last week.
No.
It's like it's a bigger adventure than that.
That's right.
And I know the euphoria of that you're experiencing, but it is also terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying.
You know, there's this big risk. First of all, you have to sell your work. So,
Yeah.
so there's risk of alienation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think for me at this point, it's like falling in love. And
Yeah.
that's part of my work, is to fall in love with my place, fall in love with my work, fall in love every day. So if
And if
there's so much risk in that.
Yeah.
And if you're being authentic, you're not being fake, then there's vulnerability, and then you're really kind of scared, because if people don't like your work, they don't like you, and all of a sudden you're like, ah. But there's also an edge, and there's an edge that can be rooted into your own authenticity. And as we get older, which is a good thing, getting more belief in ourselves, more rootedness. And then you just go, well, I got to do it this way. I can't do it fake. I can't do it just to sell.
And the more confidence, the looser you can be. Is everything works in opposites.
Yeah.
You know, the more confident, the more rooted, the more second nature, the rougher, the more unfinished. You don't have to, you don't need the polish, you don't need the finish, you don't need the, it's can I do this in fewer strokes? Can I do it with less? How do you want your articulation to be clearer, but you don't want to overdo anymore.
You don't have to second guess. Yeah.
Yeah, or try to be pleasing. God only knows. It's a lot of responsibility to try to be pleasing. Because there's certain things that are easily, there's things that are easily pleasing to people, to an audience, because first of all, art's kind of a luxury anymore. It's not not a lot of people take the time to learn. It's not something that, oh, gee, I know what I like. It's not about that. It takes, for people to be involved in the art conversation, you have to know some things to get the most out of it. So
do you think it's a luxury to own, to make, or to even be educated?
I think just to know anything about it. To even be able to look at a piece of art.
Yeah.
And the more challenging it is, it requires somebody to say, oh, I see that how they got there. I see where that fits in. I see the conversation that she's involving herself in. I see the history that she's steeping herself in. Mm-hmm. It's not out of your just little box of crayons. This comes out of a whole tradition.
Right.
And let's talk about belonging to a tribe. That's because you and the community are, that's a big part of, community is a big part of what you do.
It is. Well, I feel really wealthy I feel one of my great wealths is my friendships, and that's my community. And one of my great wealth is having ideas, lots and lots of ideas, and to be an inspirator, to inspire others. And for my tribe, I feel like ever since I was a kid, I had multiple tribes that they didn't necessarily get along, but I love diversity. So I have my whole tribe that's in my singing, and they're from 12 to 92, and all different kinds of people. And that's with Wholehearted Choir. And then I have my tribe that are more writers, or ones that are more art and creative, or the garden people, international garden people, or like my brother, tribal arts. What is it? The travelers, the creators, the makers, the spiritual people. People are really into rainforest or visionary arts or meditation, all these different kinds of things that feed me, and hopefully I make a contribution to as well. And children, being able to be with children or animals. So my community here, Monterey community, to me has always been something that is a wonderful scale. We are surrounded by beauty. We have a lot of depths of spirituality. We're the language capital of the world, so we have all this diversity of people and language and interests and worldviews right here. And a lot of arts, a big history of art. And That's one thing I love. I love being able to talk to you, Mark. I love that you bring, your perspective and your commitment and your own authentic art making.
This is part of the artist's job, and why art matters, and what the role of the artist is bigger than self, and not for everybody, but again, I know in my work and in your work, we've got a personal personal part of it that's for our own growth and understanding, and for me working through the unconscious to find things that I'd never find on my own. And again, you tend to be on that same kind of search through this creative process, but there's also, here we are in a community with an art history.
Yeah.
That someone either cheers it on and talks about it and collects it and puts it and informs people about it and preserves it,
Right.
and becomes part of it, of that tradition and local history, or that doesn't happen. I mean, histories can get lost as easily as they can get found.
Yes. And I think along with preserving our old histories, which we are rich in here, is also to really, which you do really well, is to bring out the current artists, like who's doing work today, so that it's not just a history based on the past, but it's like, how do we keep vibrancy?
It's certainly not about them. They were here, they did their deal, they're gone. We're here now, and there's a lot of great stuff that going on here that could have easily be just as interesting or more interesting than the past. It's always about the now, and the now is a very interesting time here. Although it needs to be, it does have to have this community component where artists are talking with artists.
Yeah.
You've set this up very much as a salon. You've used your house as a salon. Mm-hmm. It's important that artists do communicate with artists, that artists are encouraged, that that new work is encouraged, that you're encouraged to, it's pretty easy. I don't want to say it's pretty easy to be here and do plein air or representational, because there's a lot that goes on, and it's a beautiful place, so it's a natural place for that. But people also need to be encouraged to do art that's also in line with what's going on in the rest of the country and world.
Yeah. And new perspectives. Like a young friend of mine, has a show at the Monterey Museum right now, Chloe Wilson, and she's doing these small nocturnes with a little house, a modern house with a light inside, and then this beautiful blue sky, but all these wires and telephone poles, everything that I wouldn't want. But hers are beautiful, and they're very modern, they're very much today, and yet they have a good nod to the old nocturnes. And
I've seen her work at Carmel Art Association.
Yes, she's the youngest person.
So funny, I walked in there and all that stuff in that building, and I found one of her little pieces. I walked right up to it. So it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny how art will stand out.
Yeah, I've known her since she's a little girl.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is awesome. And so that's the youth that, being nurtured by YAC, Youth Arts Collective, but it's the new vision of doing things well and being the young artists that us older ones can mentor, but it's also the current history and the currency of seeing the beauty around us in new eyes in different ways.
Mark Baer, Elizabeth Murray, you're watching Conversations and Collaborations, and that's it for today.